Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, and we're doing the Realm of Thrones Total Conversion mod that brings the game into the Game of Thrones universe. And today we're continuing our armor video series with kind of a conglomerate video. We're going to be looking at the Night's Watch, the Free Folk, the Thenns, the White Walkers, and maybe even the Skagosi from Skagos, this little island over here. Just because there's not a ton of stuff dedicated to this region, which makes sense given the fact that it's kind of a wild, undeveloped region in the story, so they don't really have that much stuff. Like the Night's Watch kind of have somewhat of a uniform, but it's mostly just armor and then black stuff to cover the armor. And then the Wildlings have kind of whatever they can get their hands on, except for the Thenns, which like to work in bronze or brass. I can't remember which one it was in the story. Probably bronze. And then like the Skagosi, we really don't know much about at all. So we're just going to kind of clump them all together into one video here because, you know, that way I'm actually going through a significant amount of stuff. So as always, we're going to start off with the troops from this region, and then after that, we'll go through the full sets of armor that I managed to create from items that belong to this region. So let's just start off with the troop. So we'll start out with the Skagosi troop tree just because, you know, they were the ones that alphabetically came first, or last because I'm doing it from the bottom up. But we're not going to go through them in depth just because I don't think it's all that interesting, but I'll just show you the full Skagosi troop tree. So there's the lowborn, that's the basic one. Then we have the footmen. If we move up from there into tier 3, we'll go down the archer side first, the Skagosi bowman, the Skagosi archer, and the Skagosi huntsman, which is the first time we see any sort of special armor with their bone armor. Then if we go down the other side with the Skagosi soldier, we can either go to the Skagosi spearman or the Skagosi savage, and then we could go to the Skagosi master spearman or the Skagosi barbarian. I would have named him the Skagosi master savage because that would have just been funny to me. But you can see not a whole lot special there. It's mostly vanilla assets, pretty much just the bone armor that sets them apart. But that's the Skagosi troop tree. If we go through the Night's Watch troop tree, the ones that, you know who the Night's Watch are if you're a fan of Game of Thrones. The recruit doesn't look special. The soldier looks a little bit better because we have the Night's Watch armor getting worked in. Then if we go down the crossbowman troop tree with the Night's Watch crossbowman, Night's Watch elite crossbowman, and the Night's Watch master crossbowman, you'll see there's not a ton of variety, but at least it, fits theme-wise. The armor looks right. On the other side, we have the Night's Watch shield brother, the Night's Watch defender, and then either the Night's Watch stalwart for their tier 5 infantry or the Night's Watch horsemen for their tier 5 cavalry. So that's the Night's Watch troop tree. Nothing super crazy or special there, but like I said, at least it all looks like stuff that you'd see on the wall, at least based on the aesthetics from the show. Then going down the Free Folk troop tree, which is where you'll find basically all the Wildlings stuff, at least for the Free Folk side of them. We start with the Clansman, which doesn't look special. Then we'll go down the archers first with the Free Folk bowman, the Free Folk archer, the Free Folk sharpshooter, the Free Folk hawkeye, and then down the other side for infantry with the Free Folk warrior, the Free Folk axeman, and then we split into 3, so we'll have these ones, some two-handed infantry, one-handed and shield, and then cavalry eventually. So the Free Folk berserker and the Free Folk wildling berserker, I love the hat, the Free Folk spearman and the Free Folk horseman, that's their cavalry unit, then the Free Folk shieldman and the Free Folk frosthedge. So nothing special here. You can see, like I said, we do have, unique mod assets being added for them, but considering they don't really have a whole lot of armor to speak about in the show, it makes sense that this is the aesthetic they get in the mod. That's the Free Folk troop tree. Then our Wildling noble troop tree are your Thenn units. These ones look a little bit more interesting because in the show it was noted that they actually were the only ones in the army that had any substantial amounts of metal in their gear because they were able to make bronze. So we have the Free Folk son of Thenn, the Free Folk Thenn, Free Folk Thenn warrior, Free Folk Thenn cannibal, and the Free Folk Thenn impaler. So not crazy looking armor, or I guess it is kind of crazy looking, but not super complex or anything, but it definitely fits the barbarian who's just kind of figuring it out aesthetic. We also have the giants, which you can't really see all that well because, we kind of just get a groin shot, but, they have giant stuff, obviously. We have the Night's Watch Noble Troop tree, which starts with the Night's Watch Ranger Recruit, moves up to the Night's Watch Ranger, Night's Watch Elite Ranger, Night's Watch Master Ranger, and the Night's Watch Protector of the Realm, so that one looks pretty cool. But to the best of my knowledge, that basically does it for the troops of this region. So like I said, there's a reason I'm combining... I take that back. I almost skipped out on one of the factions we're covering today, which is the Wights and White Walkers. So we have 3 for the Wights. You have the basic Wight, the fearsome Wight, and the ferocious Wight. So those are our Wights. Then Then we have our White Walkers, which are somewhat basic looking, but they look like the White Walkers did in the show, and they are a cavalry unit. And then also the Night King, which is not a singular person in this mod. They're actually, I've actually built up entire armies of Night Kings in this mod, which is pretty fun, because you steamroll a lot, because they're a little bit overpowered, if you can see the stats on there. A little bit insane, but you actually can oftentimes get between 1 and 3 of these every single time you go after a White Walker camp. So it'll be like the camps that spawn all over the map for various things like pirates and stuff like that. They will have White Walker ones that'll spawn up here, and if you have an army capable of defeating White Walkers, you can take out those camps, and when you do, a lot of times you'll be able to recruit Night Kings from those, and it's just a funny process. But yeah, that is all of the troops from this region. So now let's take a look at the suits of armor from this region. Keep in mind, I'm going to try not to mix and match, so I'm not going to have, like, unless I have to, I'm not going to have Night's Watch people using Free Folk items. You know, I'm going to try to keep them separate, but let's just get into it. First, we've got what I came up with for Skagosi, since there's only one unique piece of armor for that faction, which is the bone armor. I just mixed in some other items from the factions we're covering, and I think it turned out looking pretty cool. So this is my Skagosi armor for this video. It's, like I said, it's definitely a mashup of different factions here, because we have the Thenn bronze cap, so that's from the Thenns, the Night's Watch cloak 2, the bone armor from Skagos, the Free Folk gloves, and the Free Folk boots. Like I said, it definitely is a mashup of different factions, but it looks pretty good. Aesthetically speaking, I actually kind of like it. So that is our Skagosi armor. Like I said, there was only one item, but I wanted to show it. So that's what we have for that faction. Next, moving into the Night's Watch faction, we have a couple suits of armor. This one is just your basic Night's Watch recruit, or whatever, your basic Night's Watch armor. It's made up of the Night's Watch hood, the Night's Watch cloak, Night's Watch armor, Free Folk gloves, because the Night's Watch don't have gloves, which is interesting considering they work on an ice wall, and the Night's Watch boots. So all basic stuff, but like I said, theme-wise, I think it fits. And even wearing Free Folk gloves, considering obviously they're next-door neighbors and you're constantly fighting or whatever, I think it looks fine. So that is our basic Night's Watch armor. Next, we have our heavy Night's Watch armor, or whatever you might want to call it, Night's Watch Knight or whatever. It's basically the same suit, it just swaps out the chest armor. So we have the Night's Watch hood, Night's Watch cloak, Night's Watch brigandine, Free Folk gloves, and Night's Watch boots. So we just get some heavier chest armor. So nothing crazy or over the top, but I think it looks decent. Next up, we have the Night's Watch Ranger armor, so it looks a little bit different and a little bit better in some ways and worse in others. But this one's made up of the Ranger hood, Night's Watch cloak, the Ranger armor, Free Folk gloves, and the Ranger boots. So once again, we don't have gloves for it, but I think it looks pretty good. I would probably like the other two Night's Watch ones better than this one, just because the textures on this one look a little bit off to me. But that is the Night's Watch Ranger armor. For our next one, we have one that I didn't fill in the slots because aesthetically I'm getting the vibe that I'm not supposed to. So this one is just the Wildling armor, and then I paired some Free Folk boots with it. They're living in the land of always winter. I don't remember any from the show where they didn't have anything on their torso. So maybe you pair this with a big old bear skin over top, but I don't have one of those. But whatever the case may be, I guess that's an aesthetic you could go for with this faction. Next, we have the Free Folk armor, the Free Folk basic armor, I guess you'd call it. And again, I used some stuff from other factions, but that's just because I wanted to fill it out, and I think it makes more sense. So for this one, we have the Thenn bronze cap, the Night's Watch cloak 2. It's interesting that they call it that, considering the Night's Watch famously wears black, and this is a brown cloak. But I think the Free Folk were obviously utilizing a lot of animal hide and fur and stuff to stay warm, so it makes sense that they would also utilize it. The Free Folk garb, which is a extremely basic looking something. I'm sure it's supposed to be rough spun something. And then the Free Folk gloves and the Free Folk boots. Not that attractive of a suit of armor, but I guess it works. Next up, we have the Free Folk fur armor, so it's kind of the same sort of vibe, but just slightly different. So this one I did the Thenn tribesman helmet, the Night's Watch cloak 2 again, the Free Folk fur armor, and then the Free Folk gloves and boots again. So it looks a little bit better than the last one. Again, we're borrowing for the helmet and the shoulders, but they don't have anything for that in here, and I prefer it to be a full suit of armor if I can. Plus, it makes sense faction-wise that you'd see a lot of crossover and stuff. So that is the next Free Folk armor. Next up, we have our Thenn chieftain, which is our most advanced looking Free Folk armor, which is hilarious when you consider it. helmet. This one is made up of the Thenn Chieftain helmet, the Thenn bronze pauldrons, Thenn bronze plate armor, Free Folk gloves, and the Thenn boots. So at least this one all stays within the Wildling faction, and I would say it looks decent. Like I said, we're using those bronze assets that look real snug and form-fitting, but overall, I think this one's okay. At least it's got most of the parts all belong to the Thenn faction, or the Thenn troop tree. Moving on to our giant armor, we don't have anything for the top. I suppose you could put the noble default and like the chain or plate armor reinforcements for the shoulders, but this is our giant king armor, so it makes you look really bulky. This one's made up of the giant king armor, the giant hand wraps, and the giant boots. So if you're playing as a giant in this mod, which you can in fact do, and I even have a current save where I'm playing as a giant, this is some of the better armor you can get for him. At least it looks right for you, although all of the stuff will form fit. This stuff has incredible stats, so you can see like the giant king armor 80, 20, and 20. That's pretty freaking good. And 30 for the hands, 40 for your foot armor, and then like I said, if you do the noble default and the plate armor reinforcements for your shoulders, it'll look like this but have even better stats, and you could put anything else you want. You could put a crown on top and a big old fur cloak. Whatever you want to do, it'll work, but that is our giant armor in this mod. Then moving on to our Wight and White Walker faction, we have, I mean, at least for the Wights, we don't have a whole lot because it's literally just the torso armor, because the rest of the model is just done in the Wight model, and so they'll have other stuff on them, but you know, you'll look all skeletal and stuff, so you can't, it's hard to replicate unless you choose to play the game as a Wight, which you can in fact do. But this is the Wight armor 2, that's what it looks like, and then this is the Wight armor 3, which is similar. Instead of just being the mail, it's got sort of a coat of plates and the northern style pauldrons, so obviously this one's supposed to be an old rusty beat up version of a northern soldier. So those are your two Wight options. Then our White Walker armor, which again, like I said, looks a little bit weird if you're not playing as a White Walker, but here it's made up of the White Walker armor, White Walker bracers, and the White Walker boots. So overall, looks decent, definitely matches the aesthetic of the show, but looks kind of weird on a normal person in the mod. But, you know, at least it's armor-ish. Then our Night King armor, which always makes me laugh because we have the Night King spikes, which is the head armor for this one, and it just looks so funny on a normal character. Then we have the Night King armor, White Walker bracers, and White Walker boots. So once again, nothing for the cloak or whatever. You could, of course, put whatever you want there, like the Night's Watch cloak would look perfectly fine on this suit of armor, but I just get a kick out of the Night King spikes. That's so funny to me. But that is the Night King armor, which is the last set that we have for this group of factions that I decided to do today. So after seeing what I just showed you, maybe you'll understand why I wasn't exactly in a hurry to get to this area of the map in this mod, because I wanted to show it just so you can see what it's got in the mod, but you know, obviously it's not all that interesting. They're not that cool, but they weren't that cool of a faction in the show, or factions, because obviously I showed 4 different factions here. But yeah, that's this whole wall and beyond the wall region. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.